My name is Iris Calloway, and I never thought the man I built my life around would stand in front of strangers and decide to erase me. In one sentence, he called me useless. In another, he called me poor. What he didn't know, what he never bothered to ask, was that everything he thought made him powerful was temporary. This story isn't about screaming or revenge fantasies. It's about what happens when a woman stops explaining herself and lets consequences speak. If you've ever been underestimated, stay with me. Tell me where you're watching from, and hit subscribe. You'll want to hear how this ends. I didn't know it was going to end that night. I thought it was just another appearance where I smiled, shook hands, and stayed slightly behind my husband while he took credit for the life I made possible. The venue was loud in that polite way, glassware chiming, voices layered with ambition. Scottsdale does that. Everything looks calm until it isn't. Gavin stood near the center of the room, jacket open, drink in hand, basking in attention. Serene was there too, close enough to touch him, too close for a friend. I noticed the shift before the words landed, the way people angled their bodies toward us, the way conversations stalled. Someone raised a phone, pretending to check a message. Gavin cleared his throat. "I won't take long," he said, smiling like this was a favor. "I just want to be honest for once." That word, honest, hung there. He turned to me, not fully, just enough to include me as an object in the moment. "I've been carrying dead weight for years," he said, "and I'm done pretending otherwise." A few people laughed, nervously. He took that as encouragement. "Iris has had every opportunity," he continued. "But some people just don't grow. They stay comfortable being, well, useless." I felt my heart beat slow, like my body was choosing precision over panic. "And poor," he added, shrugging. "Let's be real. I built everything we have." Seren smiled, not wide, not cruel, just satisfied. Someone whispered my name. I didn't look. Gavin lifted his glass. "I'm moving on with someone who matches my ambition, someone who contributes." Seren and I didn't plan for this to be public tonight, but hiding feels dishonest. A pause. Then, "I hope you understand." Understand. I looked at him then. Really looked. The man I married. The man who had signed papers without reading them, trusted my judgment when it suited him, ignored me when it didn't. I saw relief on his face. He thought he'd won. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't ask for privacy. I said, "You're finished." He blinked. "Excuse me?" I stepped forward so there was no doubt who I was speaking to. "You're finished." A ripple moved through the room. Gavin laughed. "Come on, Iris. Don't do this here." "Here?" I repeated. "You chose here." Serene finally spoke. "Iris, I never meant to hurt you." I looked at her. "You meant to replace me." She opened her mouth, closed it. Gavin sighed, annoyed now. "This doesn't have to be dramatic. I've already arranged for you to stay at the house for a bit. We'll sort out details later." The arrogance was almost impressive. I nodded once. "Good. Then listen carefully." The room leaned in. "You don't get the house," I said. "You don't get access to any accounts. You don't get to explain this away, and you don't get another word from me after tonight." His smile faltered. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about consequences." He scoffed. "I pay for everything, Iris." I met his eyes. "You never asked where the money came from." Silence. Serene shifted. Someone behind me inhaled sharply. Gavin recovered quickly. "This is embarrassing," he said, turning to the group. "She's emotional." I picked up my clutch, calm, deliberate. "I'll be filing first thing in the morning," I said. "You'll hear from my attorney before noon." "Attorney?" He laughed again, too loud. "With what money?" That was the moment, the exact one, when the room tipped. "With mine," I said. A few heads turned. Phones lifted higher. Gavin stared at me like I'd spoken another language. "You don't have..." I have more than you think, I said. And you just made it very easy for me to use it. Serene reached for his arm. He didn't notice. I took one last look at the faces around us. The curiosity, the judgment, the quiet calculation as people decided which side they wanted to be remembered on. Then I walked out. The air outside hit my lungs like permission. I didn't stop until I reached my car. My hands shook as I unlocked it, but my mind was already moving. Lists forming, calls lining up, doors closing behind me one by one. My phone buzzed. A text from Gavin. "You're overreacting." I deleted it. Another came through. "We can talk." I turned the engine on. As I pulled away, I made myself a promise. Not out loud. Not for drama. Just a clean, internal line drawn where I would not cross back. He wanted to humiliate me in public. I would dismantle him in daylight. When I met Gavin, I was 23 and certain of exactly two things. I wanted a stable life, and I didn't want to chase attention. Gavin mistook that second part for lack of ambition. I mistook his confidence for character. That's how it usually starts. He was charming in a practiced way, the kind of man who made plans quickly and spoke about the future as if it were already signed and sealed. He talked about development projects, leverage, scaling. I listened. I asked questions. He liked that. Said I made him feel steady. What he meant was quiet, convenient. We married fast. I didn't hesitate when he asked me to pause my own career so he could relocate for a deal that would change everything. I believed in teamwork. I believed sacrifice was temporary. When our daughter was born 2 years later, Gavin cried in the delivery room and promised he would always protect us. I believed that too. The early years blurred into routines. His long hours, my schedules, school forms, pediatric appointments, dinners reheated after 9. I handled the household finances because I was good at it. Organized, precise. Gavin said numbers bored him. I didn't argue. I just made sure the bills were paid and the investments stayed where they belonged. What I didn't tell him, because I'd been raised not to, is that my grandfather had structured my inheritance with conditions, not restrictions, protection. The trusts were designed to stay dormant unless activated by my signature. Quiet money, my mother called it. Money that worked in the background. Money that didn't need applause. Gavin never asked. He liked thinking he was the provider. I let him. The first warning sign came 8 years in, the night he joked about my hobby lifestyle at a dinner party. I laughed it off, but I felt something shift. Another came when he started referring to my money instead of our finances. Then there were the absences, late meetings that didn't align, phone calls taken outside, passwords changed casually, as if I wouldn't notice. I noticed everything. Serene entered our lives through proximity. School functions, weekend barbecues. She called me her anchor. Said she admired how I held everything together. I believed her because I wanted to. Because I was tired and didn't want to be suspicious of someone who sat next to my child at soccer games. Gavin's tone changed before his behavior did. Irritation replaced appreciation. Small criticisms crept in. I was too cautious, too comfortable, out of touch. When I suggested couples counseling, he said I was being dramatic. "You don't even work," he snapped once, late at night. "What are you stressed about?" I didn't answer. I went to bed with my back turned and told myself marriages had seasons. The day I knew something was wrong for real was the day my daughter asked me why Daddy didn't come home anymore. She said it like a fact, not a complaint. Children notice patterns adults try to rationalize. Still, I didn't confront him. I waited. I watched. I documented. After the event, after the public unraveling, I drove to my sister's house. She didn't ask questions at first. She just poured water into a glass and set it in front of me. "He said it out loud," I told her. "In front of everyone." She didn't look surprised. "I know. That landed harder than the betrayal itself." "You know what? I've seen the messages," she said. From Seren. From Gavin. I didn't want to believe it either, but it's been going on for months. My chest tightened. You should have told me. I was waiting for proof, she said. Something undeniable. I'm sorry. She slid her phone across the table. Screenshots, dates, casual cruelty dressed as affection, plans being made around my absence. There it was. No ambiguity left. No version of events where I was overreacting. My daughter appeared in the doorway then, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She looked at me and said, "Are we leaving?" I nodded. She stepped closer and whispered, "I don't like how he talks to you." That was the moment the stakes crystallized. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about what my daughter would learn if I stayed silent. About what kind of future I would be modeling if I accepted humiliation as normal. I kissed the top of her head. "We're going to be okay," I said. And for the first time since Gavin spoke those words out loud, I believed it. By morning, the shock had burned off. What remained was clarity. I didn't cry. I didn't pace. I made coffee, sat at my sister's kitchen table, and opened my laptop. The screen glowed back at me like a clean slate. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger wastes time. I needed momentum. The first call went to an attorney I'd met years earlier through my grandfather's estate work. I hadn't spoken to her since, but she remembered my name. She always did. "I need to file today," I said, "and I need everything quiet." She didn't ask why. "I'll clear my morning." By 9, I had forwarded her documentation, screenshots, dates, financial summaries Gavin had never bothered to review. By 10, she confirmed the filings were in motion and advised me not to speak to him directly. I agreed. Silence had already proven effective. Next came the accounts. I logged into the structures Gavin had never seen. Trust dashboards, holding accounts, safeguards built for moments exactly like this. I froze joint access, rerouted distributions, and initiated a temporary lock on discretionary funds tied to our household. It took less than 20 minutes. When I closed the browser, I felt lighter. The house was next. I didn't argue sentiment. I pulled up recent valuations, contacted a discreet listing agent, and authorized a private market assessment. No sign, no staging, just readiness. The house had never been his dream anyway. It had been a symbol. I packed methodically. Not everything, just what mattered. Documents, my daughter's essentials, personal items that held meaning. I left the rest untouched. There was power in restraint. At noon, my phone buzzed. Gavin. I didn't answer. Another buzz, a voicemail, then another. By the 4th attempt, curiosity got the better of him. "What did you do?" his message read. "My card just declined." I exhaled slowly. The timing was perfect. I forwarded the message to my attorney and closed my phone. School pickup felt surreal. My daughter climbed into the car, buckled herself in, and asked if we were going home. I told her we were going somewhere safe for a while. She nodded. No protest. Children understand transitions better than adults. That evening, Gavin showed up at my sister's door. He looked unsettled. No jacket, hair uncombed. The version of him that appeared when control slipped. "Iris," he said, forcing calm. "This has gone far enough." I stepped outside so my daughter wouldn't hear. "You embarrassed me," he said. "You froze me out. You don't get to do that." "I get to protect myself," I replied. "And my child." He scoffed. "You're bluffing. You don't have leverage." I smiled, just enough for him to notice. "You're calling from a phone on a payment plan I authorized." That landed. He stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. "This isn't how this was supposed to go." "You announced that publicly," I said. "This is the result." His voice softened, tried a different angle. "We can work this out, quietly." "No," I said. "You already chose your audience." I went back inside and locked the door. Later that night, my attorney emailed confirmation, filings complete, financial restraints active, custody requests pending. I read it twice. Then I closed my laptop and turned off the lights. Gavin didn't know it yet, but he'd already lost the part of me that ever hesitated. And once that part is gone, there's no undoing it. The consequences didn't arrive loudly. They arrived in fragments, rippling outward faster than Gavin could track. By the second morning, his name was already circulating, but not the way he was used to. A few people from the event had posted vague comments, not accusations, observations. Awkward night. Hard to watch. Some things should stay private. Those posts were enough. In Scottsdale, implication travels faster than truth. Gavin called again, then emailed, then showed up at the house. He didn't have a key anymore. I watched through the security feed as he stood on the front step, phone pressed to his ear, pacing like the ground might move beneath him. He looked smaller without an audience. When he realized the door wasn't opening, he kicked the step once, hard enough to hurt, not hard enough to matter. Serene lasted longer than I expected. At first, she tried to play supportive partner. She stayed close to him, posted smiling photos, leaned into the narrative that this was a bold new beginning. But confidence collapses quickly when the money doesn't follow. Her credit card declined at a boutique she loved. Her rent payment bounced. The investment opportunity Gavin promised her turned into a conversation full of excuses and deflection. She started asking questions. He didn't have answers. Meanwhile, my attorney moved efficiently. Temporary financial orders were granted. Custody arrangements were stabilized. Gavin's access to shared funds remained suspended pending review. Every email he sent my lawyer grew shorter, sharper, less composed. His business felt it next. A partner called him into a meeting he didn't control. A lender asked for reassurance he couldn't give. Someone forwarded a clip from the event, just audio, just enough to remind people of his words. Useless. Poor. The irony wasn't lost on anyone reviewing his accounts. At school pickup, another parent squeezed my hand and said, "I'm sorry." I thanked her and moved on. Sympathy wasn't my currency anymore. Gavin's mother called that night. Her voice was tight. "What's happening?" she asked. "He says you're freezing him out." "I'm enforcing boundaries," I replied. She exhaled. He should have thought before he spoke. It wasn't an apology, but it was distance. And distance was enough. Serene cracked publicly at a brunch she didn't realize would turn cold. Someone asked her how it felt to step into another woman's life. Someone else mentioned money. She laughed too hard, spilled a drink, left early. The photo that circulated afterward caught her mid-expression. Uncertain, exposed. Gavin blamed me for that too. "You're poisoning people," he texted. I didn't respond. By Friday, he was calling from a number I didn't recognize. I answered once. "You need to stop this," he said, voice tight with panic. "I can't access anything. I can't even cover payroll." "That sounds like a business problem," I replied. "Not a marriage one." "You're enjoying this," he accused. I thought about it. "No," I said. "I'm finished explaining myself." He hung up without another word. That evening, my sister handed me a glass of water and asked how I was holding up. I watched my daughter at the table, focused on her homework, steady and calm. "I'm okay," I said. And for the first time, it wasn't something I had to convince myself of. Gavin tried one last move before the weekend ended. He showed up unannounced at my sister's house again, this time earlier before school let out. He looked worn now, sleep-deprived, his confidence frayed at the edges. "Iris," he said, softer than before. "We need to talk. Please." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "You're losing control," I said. "That's not my responsibility." His jaw tightened. "You think you've won? I think you underestimated me," I replied. "And you're only just noticing." He stared at me, searching for something familiar. There was nothing left to find. As he walked away, I knew this was only the beginning. The damage was already spreading, and he was running out of places to hide. The second confrontation wasn't accidental. It was scheduled, structured, and unavoidable. Family court mediation was set for a Thursday morning, But Gavin insisted on meeting the night before. Not privately. Never privately anymore. He chose a restaurant he knew well, one he frequented with clients. High ceilings, open floor plan. The kind of place where people pretended not to listen while memorizing every word. Serene came with him. That alone told me everything. They were already seated when I arrived. Gavin stood halfway, like muscle memory kicked in before pride stopped him. Serene stayed seated, hands folded too tightly in her lap. "You didn't have to bring her," I said, sitting across from them. Gavin straightened. "She has a right to be here." "No," I replied calmly. "She has a preference." A few heads turned. The waiter paused nearby. Gavin cleared his throat. "We need to resolve this before tomorrow, quietly." "Quietly for who?" I asked. Serene finally spoke. "Iris, I never wanted things to turn hostile." I met her eyes. Hostile would have been lying. This is just honest. Her mouth tightened. Gavin leaned forward. "Let's stop pretending. You froze assets that don't belong solely to you. You're punishing me." "I secured what I was legally entitled to secure," I said. "Your attorney will explain it again tomorrow." People were listening now. Not obviously, but enough. Gavin dropped his voice. "You're making yourself look vindictive." I smiled, slow and deliberate. "You stood in front of witnesses and called me useless and poor. I didn't interrupt you. I let you finish." Serene shifted. That was the truth as you understood it." I cut in. "So let's continue being truthful." The waiter returned with water. His eyes flicked between us. He lingered. "Tell her," I said to Gavin. He frowned. "Tell her what?" "Tell her how you plan to support her." Serene turned to him. "Support me how?" Gavin stiffened. "This isn't the place." "This is exactly the place," I said. Serene's voice sharpened. "You told me the accounts were liquid, that the delay was temporary." He didn't answer. I leaned back. "The accounts you referenced were marital structures you never controlled. The ones you promised her access to don't exist the way you described." The silence was immediate. Dense. Serene looked at him. Really looked. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, "that the lifestyle you were stepping into was imaginary." Gavin snapped. "Stop." But it was too late. Serene's face changed. Not anger first, but calculation. The moment when belief drains away. "You told me she was dependent on you," she said quietly. "She was," Gavin shot back. "She didn't work. I interrupted, voice steady. "I didn't need to." Serene swallowed. "So there's no backup?" I folded my hands. "There never was." The table beside us went silent. Someone set a glass down too hard. Serene stood slowly. "You lied to me." Gavin reached for her wrist. She pulled back. "You humiliated her publicly," Serene said. "And you dragged me into it under false pretenses." He hissed, "Sit down." She didn't. She picked up her purse, shoulders squared. "I'm not ruining my life for a man who can't even ruin his honestly." Then she turned to me. "I'm sorry." It wasn't absolution. It was surrender. She walked out without looking back. Gavin stared after her, stunned. The room felt suddenly too bright. "This is what you wanted," he said to me, voice low. "To destroy me." I met his gaze. "No," he scoffed. "Then what?" I leaned in just enough for him to hear, and for the table behind us to catch the edge of it. "I wanted you to finally understand the cost of underestimating me." The words landed clean, surgical. Phones were already out. Someone whispered my name. Gavin looked around, realizing too late how exposed he was. The man who controlled rooms now sat alone at a table no one wanted. I stood, placed a card on the table. Not my number, my attorney's. "Tomorrow," I said. "We speak through counsel." As I walked away, I felt it, the shift. Not just in him, but in the room. The story had changed hands. By morning, the line was everywhere. Shared, quoted, reframed, and Gavin Calloway would never outrun it. Gavin tried to regain control the only way he knew how, by talking louder than everyone else. By Monday morning, his version of events was circulating. Carefully worded messages sent to mutual contacts. Casual lunches arranged with people who mattered. He framed himself as blindsided, betrayed by a wife who had hidden assets, and turned vindictive the moment he asked for honesty. He didn't deny the affair. He minimized it, repositioned it as overlap. A relationship that started after the marriage was already over. It might have worked if he hadn't underestimated how records behave when they're allowed to speak. The first crack came from someone he didn't expect. One of his junior partners, a man who had always deferred to him, forwarded a question instead of offering support. Just one line. "Can you explain this?" Attached was a timeline. Not dramatic, not annotated, just dates, transfers, calendar entries, travel overlaps. Clean enough that it didn't need commentary. Gavin panicked. He called me for the first time in days. I didn't answer. He emailed. I forwarded it to my attorney. He left a voicemail, angry this time, accusing me of leaking information. I hadn't leaked anything. People had simply started comparing notes. By Tuesday, a post from the charity event surfaced again, this time clipped, edited down to 10 seconds. His voice, his words. Useless and poor. No context, no defense, just the sound of contempt, preserved. It spread faster than he could respond. Someone added a caption, "This you?" He issued a statement that afternoon. It read like every apology written by committee, regretful but defensive, vague but self-centered. He apologized for how his words were perceived and emphasized the stress of a high-conflict separation. The comments tore it apart. By evening, someone had dug deeper. Saren's messages. Not the affectionate ones, the transactional ones. Screenshots of promises, of timelines that contradicted his narrative, of jokes at my expense. A private conversation leaked into public view. He called it sabotage. The internet called it clarity. A hashtag appeared overnight. I didn't create it. I didn't amplify it. I didn't acknowledge it at all. That silence made it louder. By Wednesday, his credibility was gone. A lender quietly paused a project. A board member asked for distance. A client postponed a meeting. Until things settled. His name stopped opening doors and started closing them. Gavin tried to pivot again. He claimed I had manipulated finances, that I had weaponized inheritance he didn't even know existed. He painted himself as the victim of deception. That angle lasted exactly 12 hours. Because by Thursday morning, my attorney released a single document in response to a filing he'd made. Nothing confidential, nothing inflammatory. Just confirmation that the assets he referenced had always been legally mine, protected long before our marriage. There was no betrayal there. Just ignorance. The commentary shifted instantly. So did Saren's loyalty. She posted once. A short message. No names, no accusations. Just distance. I was misled. I'm stepping away from this situation. She turned off comments and disappeared. Gavin was alone now. Publicly, completely. His phone rang constantly, not with support, but with consequences. His brother stopped returning calls. His father sent a text that said only, "Handle your mess." His mother stopped defending him entirely. That night, he showed up at my attorney's office without an appointment. Security turned him away. The next morning, he sent me a message that finally sounded honest. I didn't think it would go this far. I read it once, then deleted it. The escalation reached its peak when one of his former associates, someone he'd dismissed years earlier, shared a long post. Not angry, reflective. About power. About how men like Gavin mistake silence for weakness and loyalty for entitlement. The post went viral. By the time Gavin realized the narrative had fully turned, there was no version of himself left to salvage. He wasn't hated. He was pitied. And for a man like him, that was worse. He made one last attempt to reclaim dignity. A scheduled interview. A controlled setting. He canceled an hour before it aired. Too late. The damage was already complete. I watched it all from a distance. Not detached. Just disciplined. I focused on my daughter's routines. On meetings that mattered. On a future that no longer required me to explain myself. Gavin Calloway had wanted to redefine me publicly. Instead, the world had redefined him. And there was nothing left for him to spin. The legal dismantling didn't look dramatic from the outside. No raised voices, no slammed doors, just documents moving with precision. And a man slowly realizing there was nowhere left to stand. The temporary orders became permanent faster than Gavin expected. His attorney pushed for delays, extensions, reconsideration. The judge wasn't interested. The financial trail was clean. My documentation was thorough. Every claim Gavin made collapsed under its own lack of preparation. Custody was decided first. The court didn't punish him. It didn't need to. His travel schedule, unstable finances, and documented behavior spoke clearly enough. Primary custody was granted to me. He received structured visitation, limited, supervised at first, contingent on consistency. When the ruling came through, my attorney called it predictable. Gavin called it betrayal. He left 3 voicemails in one afternoon. The first was angry, the second desperate, the third quiet, almost small. "You're taking my daughter from me," he said. "No," I replied through counsel. "I'm protecting her." The house followed. The valuation came in higher than expected. The sale moved forward without issue. Gavin tried to contest it, claiming emotional attachment. The court noted he had publicly disavowed the marriage and the household. Emotional claims don't survive contradictions. His share was reduced to cover outstanding obligations, legal fees, deferred liabilities. He walked away with less than he imagined, and far less than he'd promised Seren. Business assets were next. A partnership dissolved quietly. A development deal was reassigned. A line of credit closed without ceremony. Gavin's name stayed on paperwork, but his influence evaporated. Investors don't like volatility. They like discretion. He had offered them neither. The worst part for him wasn't financial. It was familial. His father refused to intervene. "You embarrassed yourself," he said plainly during a call Gavin put on speaker, hoping for leverage. "Fix it without dragging the family into it." His brother withdrew support entirely. A shared venture dissolved. Communication stopped. Holidays were suddenly complicated. His mother tried once more, called me late, voice strained, asking if there was any way to soften the outcome. "There was," I said gently. Before he spoke. She didn't argue. Serene's collapse was quieter, but complete. She moved out of her apartment within a month. The lifestyle she'd stepped into vanished overnight. The social circle that had applauded her bravery dissolved just as quickly. She sent one final message to Gavin. "You ruined everything." He didn't respond. By the time the final financial orders were issued, Gavin was living out of a short-term rental on the edge of town. No long-term lease, no stability. His name carried weight once. Now it carried warnings. The court finalized the divorce on a Tuesday afternoon. No ceremony, no audience. I signed digitally, closed my laptop, picked up my daughter from school. That night, she asked if things were going to be normal again. I thought about it. "Different," I said, "but better." She smiled and went back to her homework. I didn't feel victorious. I felt resolved. Gavin sent one last message after the final ruling. "I never thought you'd do this to me." I didn't reply. Because he was right about one thing. I never would have. Not to the man I thought he was. The last meeting wasn't ordered by the court. It wasn't arranged by attorneys or forced by deadlines. Gavin asked for it himself, 3 days after the final papers were filed. He didn't call. He emailed, "I need to see you. Once. Please." I stared at the screen longer than necessary. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to be honest with myself about why I'd agree. Closure wasn't for him. It was for me. I chose a public place again, but not a restaurant this time. A quiet municipal park near the courthouse. Benches spaced wide. Foot traffic steady but uninterested. Nothing dramatic. Nothing intimate. Daylight. Open air. Witnesses without attention. He was already there when I arrived. Gavin looked older. Not just thinner or tired. Older in the way men age when the future stops answering their calls. His jacket was wrinkled. His shoes scuffed. He stood when he saw me, hesitated, then sat back down like he wasn't sure what posture he was allowed to take anymore. "Thank you for coming," he said. I sat across from him, placing my bag beside me. "You said once." He nodded quickly. "I won't take long." Silence stretched. He fidgeted with his hands, then stopped when he noticed me watching. "I didn't think you'd go through with it," he said finally. "All of it." "I know," I replied. "That night, at the event," he continued, voice unsteady. "I was angry. I wanted to feel powerful again." I didn't interrupt. "I didn't think you had it in you," he admitted, "to fight back like this." There it was, the truth he'd never meant to say out loud. I met his eyes. "You didn't think I was capable." He swallowed. "I thought you needed me." "I did," I said calmly. "Until I didn't." His shoulders slumped. "Everything fell apart so fast." "No," I corrected. "It just became visible." He rubbed his face. "I lost everything, Iris." I tilted my head slightly. "You lost access. That's not the same thing." His eyes filled then. Actual tears, not the dramatic kind, the exhausted kind. "I made a mistake," he said. "A terrible one. I hurt you. I hurt our daughter. I can admit that now." I waited. "I don't expect forgiveness," he added quickly. I need to know there's a way forward, that I'm not erased." I looked past him for a moment, watching a child ride past on a bicycle, laughing too loudly, unafraid of falling. "You're not erased," I said. "You're just not centered anymore." He shook his head. "I don't know how to live like this." "That's not my responsibility," I replied. His voice broke. "I thought you'd be weaker without me." I let that sit. Then I spoke. "I was quieter," I said. "That's not the same thing." He flinched. "I trusted you," I continued. "I built a life around your comfort. I protected your pride. And you mistook that for dependence." He opened his mouth to respond, but I raised my hand. Not sharply. Just enough. "This is the last thing I'll say to you," I told him. "So listen carefully." He nodded, desperate. "You didn't lose me when I froze accounts. You lost me when you stood in front of strangers and tried to shrink me so you could feel taller." His breath hitched. "I won't punish you anymore," I went on. "I don't need to. Consequences have their own momentum. Iris." "No," I said gently. "You don't get to interrupt this." He fell silent. "You asked if there's a way forward," I said. "There is. It just doesn't include me, or my permission, or my forgiveness." Tears slid down his face unchecked now. "I loved you," he whispered. "I know," I replied, "but you loved the version of me that made you feel important." He bowed his head. "Please, just tell me what I can do." I stood. "You can stop trying to reach me," I said. "You can show up for our daughter consistently, quietly, without apology tours or excuses. And you can live with the knowledge that you misjudged the one person who never underestimated you." He looked up at me then, eyes red, searching. I gave him the final truth. "You didn't ruin my life," I said. "You revealed it." I picked up my bag. As I walked away, I didn't look back, not because I was angry, but because there was nothing left to witness. The chapter was closed, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was leaving something behind. I felt like I was arriving. The change didn't arrive all at once. It unfolded quietly, the way real stability does, without announcements, without witnesses keeping score. 6 months passed, then 9. The house sold. We moved into something smaller, brighter, closer to my daughter's school. She chose the paint color for her room, pale green. She said it felt calm. I believed her. Mornings became predictable again. Breakfast at the counter, shoes by the door, homework done without tension hanging in the air. There were no arguments bleeding into routine, no apologies whispered after bedtime, just structure, safety, space to breathe. I went back to work, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I took a role that challenged me, one that required decisiveness and clarity. People listened when I spoke. They didn't interrupt. They didn't explain my own ideas back to me. It felt unfamiliar at first. Then it felt earned. My daughter changed, too. She stood taller, asked better questions. She stopped flinching when voices rose in movies. One night, as I tucked her in, she said, "I like our life now." That was everything. Gavin faded the way men like him always do when there's no one left to reflect them back to themselves. I heard about him only through necessity, missed visitations, late responses, excuses delivered through third parties. He tried to stabilize, but stability requires humility. He was still learning that. Seren disappeared completely. New city, new name online. No overlap, no explanation. It didn't matter. The world had moved on. I didn't dwell on what I lost. I measured what I gained instead. Autonomy, silence, the absence of needing permission to exist fully. One afternoon, I ran into someone from that night, the event where everything collapsed. She hesitated before approaching me, then smiled. "You handled that with so much grace," she said. "I don't know how you did it." I smiled back. I didn't at first. That was the truth. Strength isn't something you summon. It's something you stop giving away. I stopped checking my phone for messages that wouldn't come. Stopped replaying conversations to see where I could have been kinder, smaller, easier. I stopped apologizing for surviving the thing that tried to diminish me. The irony didn't escape me, that the man who called me useless and poor had been living off assumptions he never verified, that his certainty had been his blind spot, that my silence had been mistaken for surrender. I didn't correct him. I let reality do that work. On the anniversary of the divorce, my daughter and I took a short trip. Nothing extravagant, just a place with trees and long walks and no expectations. One night, sitting on a bench overlooking a quiet stretch of water, she leaned against me and said, "You're brave." I didn't argue. I didn't need to. Some stories end with triumph. Mine ended with alignment. With a life that no longer required defense. I didn't rebuild what was broken. I built something better, on my own terms, without shrinking to fit someone else's insecurity. Betrayal taught me this. Freedom doesn't come from proving your worth to the people who doubt you. It comes from walking away before they get another chance to be wrong about you. And I never looked back. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story resonated, if you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or had to rebuild yourself in silence, click the hype button and let me know you felt it too. I'd love to hear your thoughts or your own experience in the comments. You're not alone here. And if stories like this matter to you, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Don't forget to tap the like button. It helps this channel reach others who need to hear these stories. I appreciate you more than you know.